All right. Welcome to City Council. I'm Chairman of the Education and Youth Committee, Zeke Cohen. Joining me to my left is the Vice Chairwoman of the committee, Councilwoman Mary Pat Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. To my right is Councilman Bullock of the 9th District, and to his right is Councilman Christopher Burnett. I'm also joined by Matthew Peters, staff to the committee, as well as Jason Perkins Cohen from the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Jeffrey Amoros from the Mayor's Office, Councilman Ryan Dorsey coming on in, not a problem. So we are here today for City Council Bill 18-0121R, which was a resolution calling for support of the Be More Invested campaign for year-round youth jobs. We know that today has been a hard day for Baltimore, that we as a city are in a really tough place, but we also know that the work continues, and I'm proud to be here with my colleagues and see all these young people who have come forward to talk about why we need more youth jobs, and particularly year-round youth jobs. And just to say that work will not stop. So thank you all for joining us today. This hearing, in support of this resolution, we're gonna start by hearing from some of the young people from Community Law in Action. We'll then hear from Jason Perkins Cohen from MOED, who has been doing some really good work, both to fill what we know is an annual gap of having more young people apply to YouthWorks than jobs that can be filled, as well as working on the year-round program. So with that, I'm going to call up the young people from Community Law in Action to start us off. Please speak into the microphone, state your name, and go right ahead. We're also joined by Michael Huber from the Mayor's Office.
Okay, well, hello. My name is Erica Richardson from, get it closer? Okay, I'm short, sorry. I'm Erica Richardson from Community Law in Action.
My name is Tamara Hicks. I'm also from Clear.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cohen, Vice Chair Pat Clark, and members of the Education and Youth Committee. This past summer, my peers and I participated in CLEA's Summer Leadership Institute that helped us develop and strengthen our leadership and advocacy skills. We decided as a group to focus our advocacy campaign on research and expanding the YouthWorks program to become a year-long program. We've titled our campaign the Be More Invested campaign because we believe that investing in the development of young people is essential to address some of the issues that Baltimore faces today. We conducted research on the benefits of youth employment, learned about the structure and operating of YouthWorks, spoke with young people, Councilman Cohen and others. We know the benefits YouthWorks produces, but we think now is the time to expand those benefits and really help develop the next workforce. We developed a policy proposal that outlines our ideas of what we envision this program would look like. We'd like to share it with you and get your thoughts and suggestions. With the help of Councilman Cohen, this past December, the City Council passed Resolution 18-0121R to call on all necessary city agencies to support our campaign and the futures of young people all across Baltimore. We're very thankful to Director Jason Perkins Cohen of the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, who met with us and allowed us to share our vision of year-long youth employment in Baltimore. This idea was just that, 9 months ago, an idea. But with the support of CLEA's staff, their words of encouragement, and their belief in strengthening our youth voice, here we are putting this discussion at the forefront of Baltimore. Our city is going through a rough time right now. I don't have to talk about it. But what better way to move past the hurt and disappointment than investing in the future of Baltimore and what waits for us tomorrow? We, the young people, are ready to move past this chapter and write a new narrative for Charm City. A city filled with hope, optimism, resiliency, character, and perseverance. At the center of it all, we are the young people.
We all have basic needs that must be fulfilled. That includes the youth in Baltimore City. It's hard to envision someone who just turned 18 functioning as a legal adult without having the necessary development. Paying bills, providing for yourself, and accepting responsibility are all a part of a process of growing up. By giving a young person access to employment, you are not only helping them prepare for their futures, but you're building their confidence and self-esteem. In my research, I came across a quote from former Vice President Joe Biden, who once said, "A job is about a lot more than your paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place and your community." By giving young people access to a job, you are giving them a chance to learn how to prioritize, budget, and save money. Can't we all use those skills? Speaking from my personal experience, I have to prepare for my future. By working with CLEA, I get a chance to provide for myself, friends, and family. Aside from the money, I also get a chance to further my love for advocating and working towards becoming a lawyer and helping others. Having the opportunity to have a job, I have met with many different stakeholders in our state and local government, such as Z. Cohen, Brandon Scott, and I even had the opportunity to be honored by the Baltimore City Youth Commission and Mayor Catherine Pugh for my active civic engagement. Working at CLEA is not just about earning a paycheck for myself. It's about what I can do to prepare for the future that's waiting for me. I speak on behalf of all of my colleagues when I say every young person deserves that same opportunity. Let's support our students and be more invested. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you've put into this campaign. Any questions? All right. We're now going to hear from Jason Perkins Cohen, Director of Mayor's Office of Employment Development, who also has a Prezi.
Good evening, members of council, Chairperson Cohen. My name is Jason Perkins Cohen. I'm the Director of Employment for the city. Before I present on the specific policy, I just want to give a special thanks to the young adults from CLEA. Yep, you can clap. Even when we think beyond this specific policy or program, this is how we should do things, right? We should be talking to residents, and particularly those who are directly impacted. So I'm really grateful for both your ideas, but your energy, and I'm really proud to work with you guys. Also, I do want to say that in addition to this, of course, we have other strategies. I'm only going to focus on this particular presentation, but I know you'll be hearing about Grads to Careers later. That's a program in which we're targeting high school seniors who are not planning to go to college. We have our youth opportunity centers that focus on young adults under the age of 24 who are neither in school or work. Youth Works, of course, is our summer jobs program, and we just had a job fair on last Friday for high school seniors who are not planning to go to college. Had 200 young adults from 23 different high schools, partnership with city schools. But tonight, it's about year-round Youth Works or year-round youth employment. Unfortunately, City Schools' Dr. Pfeiffer, who we've worked very closely with, is not able to be here with us tonight, but we cannot do anything in the schools without the school system, and so I just want to make sure that we are in lockstep with the school system on this, and I'm excited about it. So, there you go. Okay, so a quick overview. Again, MOED, we're partnering with the school system. We're talking about expanding Youth Works. So you know that Youth Works is a summer employment program for young adults between the ages of 14 to 21. And the reason why we talk about expanding Youth Works in terms of year-round employment is because it has the bones to do this, right? We have 700 work sites just for the summer. We already register thousands of young people. We get their I-9s completed. So it makes sense to work off those bones even when we're, or especially when we're talking about something that is year-round. We're focused on a pilot program, which I'm going to describe in just a second, and we're targeting juniors and seniors in high school. It makes sense. They're obviously closest to graduate. In terms of employers, specifically in the private sector, they typically want to focus more on 16-year-olds and above. And we thought rather than focus on the age, we would focus on the grades. And we're talking about CTE students. And well, this will come up as we go through the program. So the young folks from CLEA already made this clear, but just to bang it home, why do we want to do? Why is a youth job important? For one thing, it allows them to explore their career pathways. It's a really important time in their life to get exposure to different options. They can develop what we refer to as hard and soft skills. Hard skills are occupational skills, and soft skills are more around, they're softer, so they're more around how you interact with your peers and your employers or your customers. And then, of course, it's about earning a paycheck, right? So it's really important for every adult, but young adults in this case, to get that feeling of earning a paycheck. It also allows us to build around things like financial education. There's also a lot of research on this about why it's important. So in addition to allowing young people to get an opportunity for career pathways, it also helps to ensure that we have public safety. So there's studies in places like Boston and Chicago that shows that young adults who have a job are less likely to get involved in the criminal justice system.
Apologies, I'm going to cut you off right there. Jason, do you have any statistics or data on, because I think that's sort of an important point when we think about investing public dollars or even private dollars into any program, that there is a public safety benefit to investing in year-round youth jobs or in jobs for young people generally. Do you have anything a little harder than that?
I don't I can give you the research on Chicago and Boston. I don't have it with me, but we can certainly send it to the council. I don't have it on Baltimore. It involves a pretty robust study that we would be happy to participate in. We wouldn't do the study ourselves. You would want an independent organization to come in and go through that work, which involves matching to the public safety department, police records, and things like that.
Understood. If you could send the committee some of that research, I'd appreciate it.
Happy to do so.
Nice.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the pilot, and we certainly know that there's more than 100 young people that would be interested in year-round employment. It's important to start this as a pilot. We got to get this right. We want to make sure that it's right for the young people that we're serving. We don't want to put them through a program that's not fully developed. It's also important for the employers on the other end to make sure that they're getting involved in something that's fully baked. And so we're talking about this as a pilot that we'd start with the school year. So we'd start it as early as September, and we would again run it through the school year. We'd run it through May. We're not just going to match kids to any job that comes up. We're going to really try and focus on what young people are interested in and what they're studying in school. Again, we're talking about CTE kids, career and technical education young adults. And so if they're studying healthcare, we're going to look for a job in the healthcare system. If they're studying construction, IT, it all makes sense. We also recognize that it's important for the young adults to have the opportunity to participate in positive youth development activities. We know this from YouthWorks. So we're not just going to shove young people into jobs. We're going to make sure that they have job readiness, they've got life skills, financial education, and some opportunity to learn about entrepreneurship. So a little bit more on the design. So MOED will focus on recruiting the placements. We will certainly be looking towards the private sector, but we wouldn't be limited towards the private sector. We would consider community organizations as well as city agencies. And again, aligning those job opportunities with the young people's interests. We would be focused on 12 hours a week. So we would be thinking about early release time. If you don't think of it in terms of early release time, it's going to get really hard to make this work because schools go to 2:30 or 3 o'clock. The travel to and from work for most, lots of businesses are 9 to 5. It's not enough time to make it worthwhile. So the school system, again, we've been in constant meetings with them about this. They're open to making sure that the young adults in this would have early release time several days a week. Again, they'll report to their work site for 12 hours. They'll be paid minimum wage or more. We're going to follow the minimum wage as of January 1st, which would be $11 an hour. And we would start them off at $11 and adjust the minimum wage every year that it goes up. We would follow the law. We'll also have staff lead biweekly youth development sessions. So jobs are really important. We are talking about young adults. It's really important to bring them back together in some structure to make sure that they feel supported. They have an opportunity to talk about things that are going great on the job, things that maybe are challenging, And these sessions are, again, sort of a well-recognized youth development practice. I think you'll probably be hearing more about that later. And to the extent, we're going to make every effort to make sure that this is in sync with YouthWorks. So obviously, we're not going to have someone work through a year with an employer, and the employer likes working with the young person, the young person likes working with the adult, and get them a whole different job in the summer. So we would align this program with YouthWorks so that next summer, the summer of 2020, hopefully they would stay in the job, assuming that they're happy and the employer's happy. And we would do it as seamlessly as possible, acknowledging that there's likely to be a small break. Most is our presumption that many folks don't want to go from the last day of school to the first day of a job, that a small break might be a good idea. But we're open to making that work however it seems best. And then the budget. So much like with YouthWorks, when you're talking about paying a wage, and that's absolutely imperative that we are paying a wage, there's a real cost to it. 12 hours a week for 100 young adults for 39 weeks adds up. You also have to pay for workers' compensation and employer taxes. And then we are talking about having 2 staff people, 1 staff person for MOED, that again is focused on the job portion of the program, 1 staff person at BCPS that's focused on the school portion of the program, and that helps to make sure that we are all working together. That's the full cost of the program. I do want to be clear that this is the cost of the program of $804,000. To the extent that we can recruit private sector employers, which we have every intention of doing, we would operate it much like YouthWorks. So with YouthWorks, for the private sector, we do require that they pay the wage, whether they pay it directly to the young people, they hire them, put them on their payroll, that's great. Or they can hire them through the city can hire them and they pay the wage into the city foundation, and that way they don't have to deal with taxes, and the city basically bears that responsibility. Would not matter to us either way, but to the extent that we can get employers to participate in this program, and I have every reason to believe that we would, and again, private sector employers, that would drive down the cost. Mm-hmm. So we don't try and, at this point, project the number of private sector employers that we would be able to recruit, but we think it would be a significant number of the 100 slots, and we can play with different estimates. If we were able to get 30 employers, it would be this. We haven't sort of run through those scenarios. For today, we're just telling you what the full cost of the program would be.
How many weeks were you saying?
We're projecting 39 weeks. It's probably a little bit optimistic.
How many weeks is the summer program?
YouthWorks is 5, so YouthWorks is not included. So,
but they could. Oh, I was thinking that YouthWorks would pick up in the summer. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, that's fine. This is actually the last slide.
I'm trying to figure out. So all right. So 12 hours a week for 39 weeks.
Yep.
But there are 52 weeks in a year.
Yep.
Therefore, there are more than a slight gap.
Yep.
And I was thinking when I saw that part, well, maybe that's because in the summer they could only work at summer youth
Right.
works, and that's only 5 weeks.
Yeah. So again, we could have done it either way. We could have put the YouthWorks cost into this. We decided not to, but again, we're being transparent about it. This is sort of thinking of this as a school year employment program, and YouthWorks has its own costs that are this year $1,600 a young person. So the 5 weeks in the summer will be borne by YouthWorks. So the young person could work 44 weeks in a year. Yeah, so it'd be 39, assuming that they. So I mean,
this program would be 39 weeks, but you would bridge this program into YouthWorks in the summer.
correct.
Oh, that's what.
But I also,
was
I mean,
going to ask.
we're trying to be open to the idea that there could be some young people, some number of the 100 who don't want to do YouthWorks in the summer, that they may have a college
That
prep.
would be fine.
And that would be fine.
But they could.
That they could, absolutely. They would already be registered for, well, they would have to do one little step to register for
And
YouthWorks.
they could continue with the same job?
Yeah, it would be great with us. But the employer would bear the additional cost if we're talking about in the private sector. Again, for this summer,
For the summer.
would be
yeah.
$1,600 for this summer per young
But
person.
if they had city support, it would,
It would be less. If it's a nonprofit or city agency, then it would come out of the YouthWorks budget. Again, we you know, I'm happy to do it a different way if you guys,
I'm not
yeah.
complaining, I'm trying to understand.
No, yeah.
But you've said it's really can be a 44-week
It can be a 44-week program.
program.
And of course
that's-
this-
I mean, because the name of it is year-round.
Yeah, we debated it a lot about what's the right way to do this. And we thought because YouthWorks is already an established program, we should really think of it as the non-YouthWorks portion. But I could easily add that in. And then in terms of why it's 44 and not 52, you know, we're sort of making allowances that young people are probably going to want a 2-week break for the holidays, or the winter holidays and spring break, and they may not start their first week of school. We probably can't make that work. So we built in a little bit of a buffer, but you know, we're open, especially if the employers want them and the young person wants to keep working, we can make that work. So it's just our best guess.
Weeks that aren't covered.
It's our best guess about the maximum number of weeks that most young people would want. But
Okay.
again,
Well,
I'm
you're
happy
working
to
with young people,
think it
right?
through. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
if that's what they're recommending.
Well, I mean, I don't want to suggest that we got to that level of detail. We definitely heard from the young people that they talked about 12 hours as one of the numbers that they mentioned. But, you know, when we actually got down to the cost part, we did our best estimate, and presented to you as I did. But we could add a week or, you know, whatever seemed to make sense. We don't want to set young people up or anyone else to make it, you know, too tough. I mean, again, lots of people go away with their families. We don't want them to have issues on the job because they want to take, you know, the winter holiday kind of thing.
Cool.
But
So you'll get feedback.
we'll get feedback, absolutely right, yeah.
The group,
Yeah, this is
the young people. Okay.
far from set in stone.
Okay, great.
All set?
Yeah, that's the last slide, yeah, sorry.
Councilman Burnett?
Yeah, I think what would be helpful, and I guess obviously there'll be future hearings, if we could have sort of different scenarios presented, you know, costs, what would it take to, you know, what would it look like if we had longer hours or longer weeks or fewer, just so we can just, you know, have sort of a broader discussion on different opportunities from, you know, ranging from what you've already proposed to a more robust program or less, you know, just so that we can kind of really figure out what the lay of the land is and what's possible within both budget constraints and the feedback that you've already gotten. So I think that'd be helpful. And if there are other best practices to compare it to, like I know Chicago has a very robust youth work style program. If there's opportunities to look at what other municipalities have done, obviously context is important here in Baltimore, but I think that'd be helpful for this committee to review as well.
Sure, we can lay out a couple of different suggestions or scenarios. I would just say that in terms of the cap of the number of hours, there is research to say that you shouldn't go over 15. That at that point it becomes a bit of a risk for the academic portion.
Sure. Okay.
Oh,
I mean, that's what the research says.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean in an individual circumstance it can't work, but.
So question for you, Jason. The numbers that you came up with, will you be able to do an evaluation at the end of this? Can you partner up? Can we partner up if we proceed on this pilot with some research institution or someone that could do an evaluation? Because part of what I'd like to hope will come out is that we can kind of normalize this concept of doing year-round young people, that is part of what we do, both as a strategy for our city and call it for our young people, for public safety, all the rest. Is there an opportunity to do sort of an evaluation, an external evaluation of how this pilot program goes?
We would certainly be open to it. And I would just mention that in terms of starting with 100, and again, it's all about money, right? I mean, we can do more, but we tried to keep it sort of in a range that we thought was possible. But much like YouthWorks didn't start at 8,000, right? YouthWorks started at a much, much, much lower number buzz started happening in the community. More and more young people registered for the summer program, and more employers said, hey, I will participate. And so it's our hope to do it right the first year, get 100 really great experiences, both from the young people and from the employers. And we don't want to, again, we in no means think that 100 is really sufficient. Right. It's just we want to start it right.
Councilman Clark.
Yes. Where are you how does the recruitment work? In other words, let me just see if I understand this. Is it the CLIA young people who came up with this program, or that's where it came from, right? Okay. So is there a recruitment strategy are there certain schools or certain neighborhoods or certain what?
So some of this is to be determined, right? I would say that, again, we're talking about 100, and we did focus on juniors and seniors and CTE.
So it's juniors and seniors.
All right, and so from there, within those constraints, I think we and the school system are open. I think we would probably do something somewhat similar to YouthWorks, which is announce it and allow young people to register and apply. And again, we have the infrastructure to do that. We can use the same website, some of the same processes, and allow young people to demonstrate their interest.
So could they, is it possible for them to register at the schools where they attend so they don't have to go to some place far away?
Yeah, I think we would probably, again, I think we would start it like YouthWorks, where you can just do it from your phone or from any computer and go online and fill out the barest minimum of information to let us know that you're interested. And then we can, when we have a group of young people at a certain school, we can come out. I mean, this is a different scenario than YouthWorks. We're talking about 100 and not 16,000. And so we could, assuming that we're not talking onesies and twosies, come to the school wherever it's possible. And again, having a staff person who's from the school system and from MOED whose job this is, I think makes it a lot easier. We can give that kind of individualized attention.
So part of this for you is really bridging the gap between city schools and city government and having sort of a joint shared partnership around this initiative?
Absolutely. It has to be together. And so the recruitment of young people, I think, starts with, again, just getting the word out. I think the word would get out really fast. And then from our side, on the employer side, I think we can, even before we know exactly who all the young people are, we can start getting some guesses and recruit, for example, some healthcare institutions, some construction companies, and have them lined up on the assumption that we'll have some young people interested in health and construction and engineering and all of that. Because this is a logistics challenge, right? It's also a bit of a speed game because school starts in September, and we're sure that young people want to work as quickly as they can. And so the more we can have lined up in advance, the better, and then we can make matches quickly. And if we turns out we recruit from an industry and no young people are interested in that industry, then we would say thanks for your participation, but we'll work with you in a different way. But it's a real, much like YouthWorks, it's a sprint.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm sorry. Can I ask one more question?
Sure, Councilwoman.
So are you going to, it sounds great. Sounds great. And so can you just talk about for 1 minute what CTE means to this program so that, because what kind of interests the students would have or how you would define that they are CTE students? Right. And because that seems to be one of the requirements, right?
As in the current iteration, it is a requirement. Again, if we're capped at 100 and we're trying to find young people who it's a little easier to do the early release for, and this is more on the school system side, and who have declared an interest in a specific occupation, we thought we would start with that. Again, I'm open to working with young adults from CLIA and other groups and working with you all to adjust that. But as a starting point, it's a little bit easier to sell it to employers in terms of a young person who's already done
a career, into an interest that is a CTE interest?
Well, because they've already done work in their
They're
school.
already working in their school.
Yeah. I mean, when I say work, I don't mean employment work. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
learning.
yes.
And
But they should have learned key skills that would be helpful in that specific occupation.
you've mentioned construction a couple times, so that's one of the CTEs?
Yeah, there are CTE programs in construction, and I don't mean to limit it to construction, but construction, healthcare, IT,
Healthcare,
absolutely.
IT,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just trying to think of-
engineering. I mean, and
engineering?
yeah, again, we're not. We wouldn't limit it in any way in terms of career interest. It would be having the young people register for the program, finding out what they're interested in, and then making the match. I was really just suggesting that we can probably have a pretty good guess that some young people will be interested in the healthcare industry. So rather than waiting, let's get started now. And I should also be clear that we would start from a base of YouthWorks. Again, we have 700 work sites in YouthWorks. So we would start by asking them, they've already worked with young people, and see if they're, and we have reason to believe that a number of them would be interested in continuing. So we would start with that base.
Good, Councilwoman.
Yes.
Jason, while we've got you, let's talk about this summer for a quick minute. How are we looking for this summer? How many young people have applied? What's the gap? How many slots do we have? How many young people completed the application versus applied, and how does it compare to last summer?
Sure. I do want to just go back 1 second and just be clear that I do want to keep working with the young
yeah.
people as we sort of continue to define the year-round program. I had to step forward with something, but it's open. Okay, so for the summer, YouthWorks is a two-step process. The first step is, again, as I mentioned, which we would probably replicate for the year-round, is online or virtual. Just over 16,000 young people completed the online phase 1 for YouthWorks. The second phase is where they have to actually come to an appointment and complete the I-9. That is a form that is required by federal law to work, setting up that you're legally allowed to work, you're presenting ID, things like that. This is not something that any city agency has any flexibility on. You have to complete the I-9. About 11,000, just over 11,000 young people completed the I-9, or that second phase.
And where can they do that?
So we have sessions almost every day of the week, including Friday evenings, and we do weekends in the month of March. We are all over the city. It's I don't have the count of the number of days, but it's well over 20. It's probably over 30.
I'm not thinking about this year.
There's a lot of days, and we.
About my I'm thinking about my district, and we don't have any. We have very few central locations.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't seem to be able to attract that kind of place to our part of the city.
Yeah, so we give them options. We do record, we do say that you've been scheduled to attend this session at this location. It's most often when we do that, it's War Memorial because it's pretty central and pretty well known and can hold a lot of people. But if they tell us that they can't make that, we'll give them other options. And if they don't show up, we'll keep reminding them to come to a different session. So 11,000 completed the second phase for YouthWorks, which means they're ready to work. And at this point, in terms of what we think we can offer May 2nd, we are planning to offer 8,000 jobs, or make 8,000 job offers for jobs to start July 1. It's mostly about resources. Again,
Sorry, you said 8,000?
8,000, correct. It's primarily about resources. So we have to have the resources to pay the young people. Again, they're paid minimum wage for 5 weeks. And every time we get $1,600, it means that we can put another young person to work. And right now we're projecting to have enough resources for 8,000. We'd be happy to do more. It's just what
did we do last year?
Last year we offered about 8,600 jobs. It's a more challenging climate to raise money.
What,
guess.
the total number that made it through the application process, again, you said, was that 11?
This year was 11, actually, it happens to be both years by chance, about 11,000. The numbers are strikingly similar. So 16,000 completed phase one both years, 11,000 completed phase two both years. And just to put that in perspective, there's 20,000 high school students in the city of Baltimore. So when you talk about 16 and 11, now we can, some young people are out of high school, they're older than high school age, but it's still a pretty good barometer.
Okay. What's going to happen? So if we're currently projecting 3,000 kids with no summer job, is there a plan B for those young people? My concern is we know summer in Baltimore can be a particularly vulnerable and violent time for our young people. And so making sure that they have options, whether that's ideally a job, but whether there's a rec center, whether there's a camp or a summer program, making sure that they have something so that they're not left out on their own. So is there a plan? Has MOED worked with other agencies or other service providers to make sure young folks that do not get youth works have something to do for those really critical couple of weeks? And I also, just quickly, as a former teacher, we know that the summer learning loss is real, and wanting to make sure our young people remain engaged, if not in work, then something academically.
Right. Well, I would say, first of all, no one knows more than we do about how critical having something to do in the summer that's positive, how important that is to young adults and for our city. And that's why we go to every length we can to raise as much money and as many jobs as we can, so that all of those young people have an opportunity. We put everything we have into it. And this hearing is important because it's not too late. So for anyone listening, you can create a summer work experience, you can invest in YouthWorks, and you would literally offer more opportunities to more young people. And we work with, out of the 700 I gave you, a very large number of those work sites are already nonprofits that are already participating in YouthWorks, and they're taking every young person that they can. We will let young people know the first week in June. We are making an extra effort this year to let them know a little earlier what their situation is with YouthWorks and to give them whatever options we have. But I'm not going to pretend they're great options because, again, we're putting everything we can into YouthWorks. So to the extent that we know of other summer programming, we will let them know, whether it's rec centers, whether it's educational enrichment programs that are not part of YouthWorks, we will certainly let them know.
Okay. That's a real concern, just young people. And obviously there's more than 3,000 who I'm sure would want a job, but for whatever reason can't apply to YouthWorks. Has there been any effort just around connecting with other city agencies to make sure that there's sort of a safety net for young people in the summer?
So as part of what we do with YouthWorks is, of course, we connect to city agencies to create summer opportunities.
Sure.
So we already have which is actually lower than a lot of other cities, 16% of the YouthWorks jobs are with city agencies. So we're already sort of working as closely with them to create whatever opportunities they have. To the extent they have other resources, other services that can be of use to young people, again, that'll be right in that document that we provide the first week in the summer. Particularly rec and parks is the most obvious example, and city schools whatever they have as well.
Yeah, and this is for a future hearing, but I know that both a priority for myself, for this council, for Mayor Young, is making sure young people are safe, and especially during those very vulnerable months. And so, it suggests that coming up with some kind of summer plan could be a really important thing for Baltimore, especially for those young people that aren't going to be in YouthWorks if there is a gap. Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Cohen, Perkins Cohen. I want to make sure we get to the questions, so I'll just go ahead and read. And thank you to everyone who's been submitting the questions. This is a very cool democratic process to make sure we get as much input. So shout out to the tech folks who figured this piece out. Thank you. How would the year-round program be scaled? And it sounds like the question is concerned around adequate staffing in the mayor's office to be able to properly manage this. And I'll say I've gotten some mostly positive feedback about the staffing and oversight and management of the program, but I also have gotten some questionable feedback and concerns raised from parents about the managers, and I know that when you have temporary staff, it can be a mixed bag. Can you talk about the staffing levels to handle year-round? What more would you need as we go into the budget season to do this properly, to address many of the concerns that I think the anonymous person who sent this in is raising, but also I can confirm that I've had parents say, look, I'm concerned about the supervisors and their ability to run this. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, first I would just say on YouthWorks that the permanent staff that we have, are absolutely phenomenal. They work unbelievable number of hours. I mentioned that they work 5 days a week on verification nights. That's the permanent staff. They work on the weekends, on Saturdays. That's the permanent staff. As we get close to the summer now, their effort, their level of effort, they're hero. It sounds maybe easy to mock, but I really view them almost as heroes, given how hard they work at this. I would love to have more permanent staff, and without a question, the program would be stronger with more permanent staff. It is simply a budget issue, and I would love the council's help. The challenge with YouthWorks, as it's currently, when we're talking about the summer program, is it's a summer program, and so having a lot more full-time staff for a program that gets hot in the summer and leading up to the summer maybe doesn't make as much sense. But if you're talking about a year-round program, you might really redesign the structure of the staffing and be able to rely a little bit less on temporary staff as long as the budget's there. But I do want to be clear. I mean, the budget for YouthWorks in the city's budget is $2.2 million. That pays for about 1,500 kids. And I mentioned that we're going to have 8,000 kids go to work. So as it is, we are, you could tell me, I think we're one of the few agencies that's raising most of its budget from outside of city government, as it is. And what we think about every time we think about hiring an additional staff person is, we can hire additional staff person or we can put more kids to work. And that's not a choice we want to make, but we typically go to put more kids to work. We're trying to keep that balance. And I think, again, I'm not going to say we're perfect. We certainly aren't. But I think we more or less have a pretty good balance. I think we're going to be even stronger this year. In terms of your question, in terms of scaling, I think we have to get this thing started. We have to get the infrastructure in place so that young people can transition, can leave school to go to a job site, be there on time, meet the employer's expectations. We have to get employers used to having young people on this is a big one, having them used to having them on their work site for 39 weeks during the school year. And I think it makes sense to start it at whether it's 100 or 120, something more manageable to get it right. Because if we don't get it right and we're not giving a good experience for young people, you don't get a second chance. And the same is true for the employers. But I think if we do get it right, we can scale it. Just, I'm not going to say it's going to go from 100 to 8,000 overnight. That would be ludicrous. But I do think that if everyone's having a good experience and the resources are there, we can find more employers who want to work with young people. And again, I would say that if we get this up and running, we can think about the whole staffing structure for youth employment differently.
So just to put a fine point on that, the sort of message publicly is we need more employers, more private sector employers to step up and be part of this as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Councilman Bullitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Perkins Cohen. One of the things that you mentioned was that a significant amount of the jobs are provided by city agencies. And so when we start thinking about career pathways, curious as to the breakdown in terms of some of the city agencies that are hiring youth works, particularly the Baltimore Police Department and Health Department. Do you have any figures on that and what that looks like?
I didn't come with those figures. I can make them available to the council. I do, I think that 16% of the jobs is not a huge percentage. I think actually the perception of the number of YouthWorks jobs that are in the public sector is much, much higher than that. But I also appreciate where I think your point is making, which is that, there's a lot of great we're all public servants, right? So we believe in working for city government, but police department, fire department, I know is a higher entity, health department. Look, we have a program with Department of Public Works that I know many of you come to the graduation, where we do already work with them year-round and graduate them after the summer, into a permanent position. It's a model that we could repeat over and over again with city agencies. These are good, high-skilled jobs, and many of them are becoming apprentices.
And I'm glad to hear that. I mean, one of the things that we also believe in is exposing young people to potential careers. And so if we want to break down some of the barriers as it relates to communities and policing, it's something we should be thinking about. And we all know about some of the other issues as far as health. So thank you for pushing that.
And I can just tell you, in the last week, I've had 2 calls with the police department about thinking about how we work with them, particularly focused on young people.
Thank you.
Still still to be formed.
Yeah, to my colleague's point, I think just how do we create better pipelines? Because we still know that I'm not going to pick on one in particular, but in too many of our city agencies, too many of the folks who work in them do not live in our city. And we need to be better about employing folks who live here to work for Baltimore.
Can I just make one quick comment? You mentioned the evaluation of youth works or year-round youth employment, which I would support. I would just sort of say, and not the kind of evaluation that you mean, but one thing that we do as an agency that I really think would be great for other agencies is that we hire youth workers to tell us about our agency. So in terms of youth works, last few years, they've interviewed 300 different young people at different places all around the city, not just in city government, and come back and told us what the youth experience is, and it makes a big difference into how we run the program. And lots of city agencies could make that one of the things that they do with youth workers, and to inform them about their practices. Again, it's not a formal evaluation. It doesn't take the place of it, but it's a really important piece of our work.
Great. Take a few of these questions online and kind of summarize them. And just for folks that are Charm TV fans, we have a website that's up that you can see at the top of the slide, where you can go and ask questions of the committee, because as my colleague said, we are seeking to make these hearings as democratic as possible. And so again, thank you to Haley and Stephanie and my team that's been working hard to figure this out. But just to kind of take a few of them and put them together. So one is, how are you going to work with community-based organizations that are already doing year-round employment type work? And then also, do you feel like 2 staff members will be sufficient for 100 kids? And then finally, how do we make it so that the jobs that we provide are meaningful, robust as possible? We've all had first jobs that are not always fun and that require some doing some things you don't want to do. But how do we make it so that we're holding ourselves and employers accountable to make sure this is a meaningful experience as young people gain work skills, that they're also learning about whatever it is that they're doing?
So I would say on the community organization side, again, we have a big network already. I do not think we're going to have any problem if this is funded, when we put the word out to employers, including community organizations, to get to 100 slots. We're going to get there really fast. We want to make those slots as valuable as we can, and most importantly, make them connected to what young people want. So we're not just going to take any slot. It has to be something that the young people we're working with are interested in. In terms of, I might have forgotten all of your questions. Staffing, 2 people. Yeah. So again, it's, we're trying to
I guess, are you going to be able to provide some back-end support from MOED to those 2 people?
I think we can. I mean, I think 2 people is sufficient. We're trying to balance, we could ask for more and it would cost more and it would really result in fewer young people getting a job, and we don't want to do that. So we really push ourselves to find the balance between a good program with good support and not too fat and happy. And so we think one MOED person to focus on the employer side, one school system to focus on the young person side, and work together with the other sports that we have in place is sufficient. And in terms of the quality of the jobs, I think that's where our MOD person will be making sure on the front end that they're offering the opportunity for the young person to not just earn a paycheck, but to grow. In my experience, to your point, Councilman Cohen, young people are reasonable. They understand that that there might be some work that isn't the most exciting work, as long as there's a balance to it and as long as they see a point to what they're doing. We just have to work with employers as they're coming up with what they're planning to offer the young person, that it is strong. And to the extent that things go awry, that's where our employee will pull them out if they need to, or not work with them again. And look, we don't have many examples of that in YouthWorks, but we have had some where we decide we're not going to work with this employer again. It's just they're not a good fit for young people. It's not scandalous, it's just not a good fit.
Yeah, and Jason, I appreciate that. And just from having worked with you for the last couple of summers on the This Is Working program and sort of seeing this as a extension and part and parcel, I think one thing that is really helpful is if those 2 people are also in communication with the businesses or with the city agencies or the employers, because I think you all are expert in how to do youth employment, and so providing that ongoing support, coaching, et cetera, made a big difference over the last couple of summers, and I think could year-round as well.
And we have lots of examples where the employer will, because we have these interactions, will say, young person X is doing a great job, but there's one little thing, and we'll say, do you want us to have a conversation? Do you want to have the conversation? Can we give you some coaching? And you can smooth over a lot of any sort of bumps in the road.
Awesome. Last question from my young friends over there before we head to public testimony. So if the young people are allowed early release, how are they being supported and coached academically? So, right, one thing we don't want is, even though we know that for a lot of our young people, there are some deep financial needs, they need a job. But on the other hand, we do not want their school academics to slip and fall apart. So have you and Rachel from the school system sort of figured out or thought about how to balance those important needs?
So I would say, first of all, I would love to hear from them at the right time about what they think would be the best way to support young people and find that balance. But it is finding that balance, and we certainly don't want to tip the scales where young people are going to work and earning a paycheck, but again, it can be overwhelming for some in some points of life, and their academic slip. That's not. No one here wants to do that, and so we have to make sure, and that's why it's important to have the staff person with the school system to have these check-ins with young people, not just about the job, but about the school part as well.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. We are now going to head to public testimony. Again, feel free to weigh in up there, but we're going to hear from folks, ask people to keep the testimony to 2 minutes, and we're going to start with Susan Elias. I'm going to call folks in the order in which they came.
Good evening, Chairman Cohen, members of council. My name is Sue Elias, and I'm the Executive Vice President at the Parks and People Foundation. I want to thank Councilman Cohen's staff for asking me to come testify. Our youth would be here, but they're working on a really big project this afternoon that they didn't want to miss. We've been running a program very similar to what Jason describes for almost 10 years. We have 50 youth that are with us in both the summer and the school year, and this high school program for all high school age students focuses on the development of life and job skills, environmental education, in the transition to college or a living wage green career. We pay our We call them our school year, our interns, and for 4 days a week, 2 hours a day after school from October through May. And we raised $75,000 just to pay those stipends, of which a good portion is from community development block grant funds that we've been receiving for many years. We started this program 10 years ago because we believed that the high school youth needed more than just the 5 weeks, that we could provide them in 5 weeks. We've learned that in order for them to succeed in long-term employment, they need coaching, they need support to develop their social and emotional competencies, the ability to try and fail in a supportive setting in their first job. And they need training and essential job skills, and we provide all of those, in addition to an environmentally focused curriculum where they're out in the community, working in community settings, and they've identified that that's one of the most important things to them. They're out there in a safe environment where they feel less vulnerable in the community. The high school youth have told us if we did not pay them, they would end up leaving us for a job at mostly in fast food. They often contribute to their family income in addition to paying for their own necessities. And they're also clear with us that they don't want to be in an after-school program. They want a job or a paid internship where they're building their work history while also providing resources for their family. We're very grateful to Jason and MOED. We've been partners with them for many years. We do participate. We have 35 spots in the summer Youth Works program. And what I wanted to come and say is that partnership with the nonprofit organizations is essential. We do the recruitment. We have the connections into the community. We provide the support that they need. We're identifying relationships and resources. We are long-term. Our students are with us for multiple years, 2 to 3 years usually. We get to know these students. We've had one student recently who was off the grid for a while, wasn't at school, wasn't going to their foster home, and eventually showed up at our program to explain what was going on. We have really well-trained, caring staff that develop really close relationships. We provide those life skills, the social emotional learning, and we work with them, meet with them, provide the extra support in terms of their transition to their next phase of life, whether that's a career. Our goal is to get them directly into a career or into a college program. The possible negative aspects of a program where they don't receive that support is that they have a negative experience at a first job and then they're scared off of working. So we believe that the nonprofits like us are an essential part of this program. We've got experience in doing this, so we have students that are with us in the school year and stay with us in the summer, and you're right, some of them don't want to be with us for the summer. They want to go. One went off and did a national park program and then came back to us. So we've seen them go through this transition and how the students ebb and flow, but they want to come back to us. They say we're their home. So we also have students that have been with us and then said, you know what, I'm going to apply to the merit program. It was a better fit, and that to us is a success because they're in something. So we've been raising money to pay these kids for 10 years. We would love to continue to partner and be able to get additional resources. We can't grow the program beyond 35 because our total budget is about $400,000 for about 50 kids, so we're on par. And so we would love to. We can't grow unless we find additional support to pay more students.
Thank you, first off, for your testimony and for your work. And I'm glad you're here because, just to lift up the importance of that partnership, seeing for-profit, nonprofit, and government working together, I think is really important. And I know that MOED Youth works with a lot of great nonprofits like yours. So again, appreciate the work and the partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Bosco. Good afternoon.
Hi.
My name is Ed Bosco. I'm a Baltimore City resident. We own Verde Restaurant in Canton, and we've been associated with the Public Works program since last year. But we've hired high school students for various years. Last year, we found the program for us to be very successful because we saw a young person come into our restaurant and actually learn about a perspective that previously she didn't have, working as a team, getting skills, looking at an organization trying to provide services. And more so than getting productivity last year, we were looking to educate someone and change their perspective. I think it worked very well. It certainly worked for us. We know that this young lady was able to go out and get a subsequent job, her second job. We were her first job. And I think if the city program works, it's because small business is there to try to help educate folks and not just, have them do menial jobs. It's teamwork, it's changing perspectives, it's giving people a vision that previously they didn't have. So we're a big supporter of the City Work program. We work with the Cristo Rey High School. We've hired some of their folks over the years. And if you're in the community, I believe you really have to be in the community. And we try to do that every day at Verde. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. And again, just want to lift up that it is about partnership and having a great small business like Verde that is really committed to hiring young people, not just to your point about increasing your productivity, but about educating and building up our next workforce and teaching them about business and how to start a business, I think is critically important. And again, I'm glad for the partnership with city government. So thank you for that.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
All right. John Bussey, good transition to Cristo Rey.
Thank you very much, Councilman Cohen, and thank you everybody else. Yeah, I'm John Bussey, Director of the Corporate Internship Program at Cristo Rey Jesuit High School, a private high school in Fells Point where our students, all of them, participate in a 4-year integrated work-study model to earn a large portion of their own tuition. So we're actually working sort of backwards from what the model that Jason is creating, because we have a school year-based work-study program. Our students go to real jobs in real places 5 days per month for the entire school day. Like I said, the money that they earn through those experiences goes to offset a large portion of their tuition cost. We think it is the special sauce in what happens afterwards. And so for the 9th consecutive year, we've been lucky enough to have all of our students accepted into college. Many of them, so we currently have in college now we have 499 graduates. Those graduates are experiencing success in the form of persistence and in the form of college completion rates that are far above what could be predicted from their zip codes. And so we think that professional work experience is the key ingredient. And so one thing we've done this past year with the help of Jason and his office is try to integrate our experience with the YouthWorks experience to keep the students engaged over the summer. We have approximately 170 students this year verified for YouthWorks employment, and I have to say to buttress Mr. Perkins Cohen's point, that staff in his office has been wonderful every step of the way for us. They've been accommodative, they've been responsive, they've been there, and truly, it's very apparent that the interest of the young adults and the young people are at the core of what they're doing. And so we're, like I said, we have this experience sort of set up already, and we're at the ready to assist in any way we can.
Thanks very much, John. And again, I think Cristo Rey, in a lot of ways, is sort of the gold standard of schools that do work-based learning. And so I think there's a lot of co-learning that can go on, and I know that's already happening between city government and Cristo Rey. And again, just want to say I appreciate the partnership.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Tori Grace. And Derek Rivers, you want to, Marcus?
Yes.
Cool.
Did you?
Hi, my name is Tori Grace. Chair of Board of Directors of Youth is Resources, also known as YAR.
Hello, my name is Marcus Bentley, and I'm here as task force member of YAR.
First, I want to say we're here in support of year-round jobs with CLEA. And I want to say a little bit about YAR. We are a grant-making organization. We give grants to young people in Baltimore City trying to carry out projects that address critical community issues. And we have a paid portion of our board that's called Task Force. They're the most involved youth, and they basically organize and lead around our issue agenda. You can go.
Hello, so today I'll be speaking upon youth, year-round youth jobs. They're important to us because we get real life work experience. People also can have the responsibility to take care of their siblings or family in general and themselves. It also builds their resume, and it doesn't give competition with experienced adults that's in the career field. It also gives them a chance to not be on the streets and basically stay out of conflict, and it gives them the chance to do something that they love and get paid upon it. So we hope you support the year-round youth works. We also want to thank CLEA.
Thank you, guys.
We hope the City Council continues to support us and support us in what is important to us. Thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. And, just want to say, at a time when there's a lot of negativity being hurled at our city, it's pretty moving for me to see young people supporting each other in the way that you all are, to have YAR here supporting CLEA and the work that you all have been doing. I think that actually says a lot about young folks in our city, and it makes me feel really, really hopeful about the future for Baltimore. So thank you for that.
Thank you for hearing us out.
Of course.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Derek Rivers. All right. Okay. Stephanie Ampanza.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Stephanie Ampanza. I serve as Executive Director for Urban Alliance Baltimore, and here really to support the work that Zeke and Jason is doing. We've worked very closely with them for the past 10 years. At Urban Alliance, we actually provide year-round internships, model very similar to what's being presented here. And our theory of change is how do you work with youth and really make sure that you capture them before they disconnect from school and work. And we do this by providing year-round internships for high school seniors, simultaneously working with employer partners to make sure we're providing entry-level support and really creating that talent pipeline. We love this work. We've been doing this for 10 years, providing these internships where young people are able to work 12 hours a week. They get the professional development, mentorship, and case management, and it really provides really a path for them to go on a path of economic self-sufficiency. And so the ability to continuous work and partner with Jason and his team means a lot to us because we know what it means. We went through 2 RCT studies that really proved that youth employment, particularly early youth employment with the half-day model and with the mentorship and the wraparound service program, really make sure that youth are connected to a pathway. So we really want to make sure that this is something that does go to scale because we know the impact that it can make on young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, Stephanie, appreciate the work. Urban Alliance, once again, kind of a gold standard as far as meaningful youth employment, and appreciate the continued partnership and the continued co-learning between you and us and city government. So thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Janelle Gendrano.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janelle Gendrano. I work for a nonprofit called Baltimore's Promise, and we work with partners across the city to advance efforts that improve outcomes for Baltimore City young people cradle to career. So I believe we're all here because we know and understand how important youth employment is. And I just wanted to start with some data that shows what happens when we aren't effectively connecting older youth to employment, and then talk about an effort that Jason referenced earlier called Grads to Careers that is working on solving that issue for recent city schools graduates. So Baltimore's Promise supported an analysis of the employment, earning, and education outcomes of the class of 2009 graduates of city schools, persisted all the way through high school and graduated. And high level, what we learned, 26% of those young people were disconnected from school and work the fall after graduation. And 6 years later, the median income of the class of 2009 is what we would expect one to make on a living wage, was around $15,000. So what that tells us is, as a city, we just need to be...
I
Sure.
apologize.
Yeah.
Run that back one more
Yes.
time.
So class of 2009, fall after graduation, 26% of the young people that we saw in our longitudinal analysis of their outcomes, 26% were disconnected from school and work. Didn't show up on education data, didn't show up on earnings data. And then 6 years later, the median income of the class of 2009 ballpark was about $15,000, a little bit higher for those that managed to make it through four-year education, and lower for those that, for that 26%, that was around $11,000 was their median income 6 years later.
So the 15, that's the $15,000. That's not for the 26% that were disconnected. That's for the entire class of 2009.
The whole thing. Yep, it was around $11,000 for the 26% that was disconnected fall after graduation. Yeah, so what that tells us as a city, that we should be doing a better job being more intentional about connecting young people to employment opportunities, especially upon graduation if they're not intending to go to college. So to work on this issue and to improve these outcomes, Baltimore's Promise, city schools, and the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, we're working together to figure out the most effective way to connect high school graduates who are not going to college after graduation, either because they're not interested or they're not able to at that time, to successfully connect to training and jobs on the path to a career and family supporting wage. So what does Grads to Careers, this effort, this collaborative effort, what does that look like? So we collectively identified workforce training programs that we funded to provide occupational skills training, so workforce training, to recent city schools graduates or GED holders, 18 to 21. So Urban Alliance, thank you, is one of our programs in G2C, the Future Surveyors program. And youth input and feedback inform the selection of those programs because we want to make sure that it is relevant to the young people's interests and needs. About 144 youth have enrolled in training programs. Many have already completed, received credentials, and found jobs. And we're working with workforce training programs, really with MOED leading this work, to just figure out best ways to serve older youth more effectively, do work a little bit differently. We can learn together some best practices that we can share broadly with the field over time. And so critical to the model are wraparound supports. This is based off of the success that One Baltimore for Jobs, the One Baltimore for Jobs initiative, learned through their efforts, so we made sure to incorporate that as a part of Grads to Careers with some centralized legal support, wellness services, and also just general participant support to help navigate the barriers that young people experience as they're trying to connect to a job and to work, even get through training programs. And then we also had to build in a summer remediation program to help Grads to Careers students who are really earnest about connecting to the workforce on track to graduate, realizing that they're not meeting the academic eligibility requirements for many of these programs on average, 6th grade math and 8th grade reading, which is, I think, another separate but related issue. So those are critical pieces of what that program looks like, and Grads to Careers is really helping us to better understand what we need to do to better prepare young people for the workforce, but also to better prepare workforce training programs and employers to better receive young people who are interested in going directly to work. We are fairly early in this effort. We're just about to close up the first cycle of implementation, so we have a lot more to dig through and learn. But what we already know, and what I think people in this room know, is that we need more investment in readiness, exposure opportunities like year-round youth works and other internship programs and such, and more conversations in the city on the business sector's role in hiring and supporting young people and supporting them as their job seekers. So anyway, thank you for your time and for your support of the young people in Baltimore City.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work you're doing with Baltimore's Promise, and would just say that the statistics that you provided are alarming. $15,000 a year is really poverty wage in a city like Baltimore, and that is the average for a class. That is not acceptable and not good, and is a call to action for all of us. And that for that disconnected population, that it's 11,000. Again, that's really not good. So appreciate the work. Appreciate also, it's important that we have hard numbers, that we have data like what you've been able to produce through Baltimore's Promise. So thanks for the research that you put into that.
Certainly. Thank you.
Jacques Thompson.
I thought he worked with you.
He does.
Hello, my name is Jacques Thompson, and I'm here on behalf of Merit, which was mentioned a little earlier. So Merit is a health leadership program that takes a small group of students and basically gives them the full medical experience, as in exposes them to the medical field, the different jobs, the type of homework that they'll be doing in medical school, and the high-level college research that they may be exposed to. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because Merit, what they've done is they are able to give, and again, it's a very small group of students, but they're able to give students a very high-quality experience in the work field. So I'm going to give a personal example. About last summer, I was given the opportunity to shadow a researcher, and I was able, and this is in Johns Hopkins, and I was able to research hypogonadism in sickle cell disease mice, right, which is essentially just low testosterone, right? So I learned a lot from that experience. And even though I'm not going to go into the medical field when I get older, I know that a lot of students who would really want to go into research would have really benefited from a program like that. But the problem is there's just not enough opportunities to get them into those spaces. And this is not just for the medical field. It can be for law. It can be for policing. It can be for anything. There's just not enough pathways and avenues to get students and youth involved in these things that would help them further their dreams. So that's why I support youth jobs, because there are a lot of students around the city who have desires that we can meet if we simply give them the space and the opportunities to get there.
Thank you, Jacques, and thanks for all the work you've been doing in my office as well. Appreciate it. Anyone else from the public that would like to testify? Come on up. And if you could just start with your name and the organization you're with.
Definitely. Hello, everybody. My name is Tavon Payne. Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here and hear from the youth today, as well as some of the supporters and organizations moving initiatives for the youth. I'm sorry, I'm very soft speaker, sorry. My name is Tavon Payne. I'm with PTG, and we are an advocacy-based organization, mainly and wholly. We've done a few initiatives with some of the council people. Christopher Burnett, he's actually from my district. We worked on a water bill initiative. He's a great gentleman. Ryan Dorsey, who stepped out a little earlier. And now we're here to focus on the youth and opportunities for the youth. So having the opportunity to support full-time work, not full-time, year-round work is how we look at it. and to hear from the youth themselves a little bit before this and what it actually means to them, meaning to be a part of supporting the family unit. And not only getting away from the dangers that they can find if they're idle, but also being contributing members to the household. So PTG Plus stands as an organization that focuses on one of the questions that was presented from the audience. I really like that too. Who set that up? That was nice. There you go. What would be the purpose and the plan to make sure that it's not just menial labor. So organizations like PTG Plus, which we hear that this the company would love to find employers to support youth jobs. So PTG Plus has focused on, for about 3 years now, partnering with universities, including the University of Baltimore, to enter into high schools and middle schools to work on initiatives that focus on teaching entrepreneurship to particularly at-risk youth. So there were schools, there's a program with the University of Baltimore Law School, and so we focused on schools in the Mount Vernon area primarily and particularly. And so it's been great to scale out and ramp up a program, and we would love, because we partner with some of the Fortune 500 companies as well, including Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and also some local real estate investors, the Real Estate Roundtable with Christopher King, and a few others. And so we would love the opportunity to, if this organization is looking for employers to pass the youth on to be able to be a pipeline and a transition to some of the largest organizations and better opportunities that there are, including some of the youth mentioned they want to work with STEM. There's a large push for IoT and smart cities coming out, and PTG Plus has been selected as one of the 3 in the Maryland area to roll out Sprint's IoT, they're calling it IoT in a Box program, to focus on the smart city rollout. So we would love to have youth be a part of that, and we'd be willing to open up discussions to how we could bridge that partnership.
That's outstanding. Tavon, do you work in partnership with Moed already?
Not formally, but doing a lot of work with members of City Council and also just the administration. Well, the previous administration as of a few hours ago. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to say, if you don't mind, after this meeting, real quick, you might want to connect with Mr. Perkins Cohen over here, because that does sound like a really great partnership.
Definitely.
And thanks for all your work.
Indeed. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Anyone else from the public looking to testify? Yes, sir, and yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm William Reagan. I'm just a citizen of Fells Point, not representing anyone. I have one question for you, Mr. Cohen. Is there any thought, or has anyone thought of doing IT certifications or CNA certifications or any lower kind of certifications that could, one, extend the timeline that the youth are involved with in the community, and then two, going back to graduation and understanding what happens after graduation, they'll be more prepared to actually get real jobs that could benefit them for years to come. The other point I wanted to kind of talk about is the entrepreneurship. A lot of the kids, from what I understand, it's kind of draconian when you're applying to the Youth Works program, and the fact if you miss the deadline, if you don't have certain paperwork, some of these kids don't even have the paperwork that they need, or they don't know what they have. So is there a way that we could somehow, as the adults in the room, make it a little bit more efficient for the Youth Works program and in general, from an IT standpoint, to database and log some of the processes and where the kids are in those processes? Thank you.
I'm going to take a wild guess here and say you work in IT.
No, actually I don't.
What do you do?
I work with disabled individuals in entrepreneurship and ex-convicts in entrepreneurship.
Awesome.
So.
All right. So really quick, I definitely think there is interest in making any processes more efficient. And again, if you want to connect with Director Perkins Cohen over here afterward, I know that that's an interest of his. Look, I know that from my time in a nonprofit where we partnered with Youth Works, that there are some challenges in terms of young people finding it and the sign up and all the rest. But I will say, I think Moed has really strive to improve in that process. And it's an ongoing evolution. And so I know they'd be interested in thinking about how to do even better. And just speaking for myself, I definitely think there is an interest in information technology and in getting some of our young people. We've been talking in this chamber recently about STEM initiatives, and I think having our young people sort of linking directly with some of the jobs and careers of the future, I think is really important, because I think the point that you make is, whether we like it or not, the robots are coming and automation is coming. And as we start to think about sort of future, what work will look like, we got to make sure our young people are ahead of the curve and that they are accessing technology and using it and leveraging it for their own advancement, for the advancement of our city. So I appreciate your points.
And just a side note, I'm 30 years old, so I'm not technically a youth anymore, but I just got out of that area. And a lot of my friends and coworkers participated in the entry-level certifications for IT, and they're usually about 4 to 8 weeks of study. So it's not like this college education process. It's very concise, and it's relatively short time frame that I think we could look into kind of creating some kind of plan.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ma'am.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Jajix, and I'm a Baltimore City public school teacher as of this year, which is very exciting. Before this, I was in another county, Anne Arundel County, that had integrated workforce development with its school systems. And through my relationship with that program and my love of this city, which I've lived in since 2002, a little program called This Is Working sort of organically emerged through Zeke Cohen's commitment to young people in the city and Jason Perkins Cohen's commitment to innovation, no matter the effort that took, and his staff is phenomenal. So This Is Working. Oh, and yes, absolutely. And lots of other people, lots of business people. So This Is Working was a program that worked with YouthWorks, but also wanted to integrate the learning portion with the working portion. And Urban Alliance, I think, comes really close to that because it integrates it with the school day. But as I was thinking, I mean, everybody in here is sort of in agreement. So what's the challenge? Why are we still advocating for something that seems so logical and seems like a win-win for everybody? Employers need prepared employees. Young people want to work, and they and so today I got a financial literacy curriculum from PNC, and we were talking about a cost-benefit analysis with students in class, in my world history class. And by the way, economics is a standard 4, so it's totally legitimate in the Maryland State curriculum. But they're doing cost-benefits analysis that take them out of the classroom and towards jobs. And that's why we have a 10-month school calendar. We still have a 10-month school calendar because the kids needed to work starting in the summer. And so as long as you're pitting careers against the classroom will eventually lose. And we will lose the young people out of them as they go towards the thing they actually need, which is the learning that is happening in the real world instead of the simulated world of the classroom. And I say that as a teacher, that all of these programs that happen in the summer, that happen alongside and in step with the classroom, the deep need that remains is integration into the classroom. And so all of these things, figuring out how to partner with teachers and students in step every day, where it's integrated into all classrooms, all topics, I think is what I would most like to advocate for, because that's what the young people need. And so I applaud everyone and all the work that you're doing, and I look forward to innovative ways to bring them closer together. And thank you all that have contributed to this effort.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jajix, and really glad that you're a Baltimore City public school teacher.
I don't think I said my name. Barbara Jajix, I don't remember. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for being here. Any other public testimony? All right. So I want to, again, thank my staff, Flannery McCardle, Haley Tilt, Rebecca Tabb, legal counsel for the city of Baltimore. And thank you all, thanks everyone for coming out on what has been a challenging day for our city, but it is hearings like this one where we have folks from literally every sector coming together to take on this challenge that renews my hope and faith for Baltimore. And so again, thank you to CLIA for jumpstarting this effort, and to everyone for being here today. This concludes this hearing, and please clean up your seats.
Yeah, there's a sign that says that here. They're talking to us.